He told authorities his wife fell overboard in the dark. He told them the currents were strong. The water was rough. She had the boat keys in her pocket when she went in, which killed the engine and left him with no way to restart it. So he paddled for hours through the dark Bahamian Sea alone in an 8-foot dinghy until he reached a boatyard at 4 in the morning and told someone what happened. That was his story. Then investigators pulled the GPS data from his own devices, and what they found sent the entire investigation in a completely different direction. The sailboat the couple lived on, a vessel named Soulmate, had its own tracking system, an automatic identification system that broadcasts a vessel's identity, speed, and position in real time. That system went dark at 9:29 p.m. on the night Lynette Hooker disappeared. Did not come back online until 8:40 the following morning. 11 hours and 11 minutes of silence. A former federal prosecutor reviewed that data and used one phrase to describe it: highly suspicious. This is the Lynette Hooker case. And the question at the center of it is not whether she went overboard. It is whether the man who was there when she did has told investigators the truth about where, when, and why. Lynette Hooker was 55 years old, a mother, and by every account from those who knew her, an experienced mariner. She was from Onstead, Michigan. She and her husband, Brian Hooker, 58, had built a life on the water. Together, they lived aboard their sailboat full-time in retirement, traveling the U.S. coastline and Caribbean, documenting their journey on a social media channel called Sailing Hookers. The ocean was not unfamiliar to her. The water was not something she was afraid of. She was not the kind of person who simply fell off a boat. That detail, that she was experienced, capable, and completely at home on the water, is the foundation on which everything that followed becomes impossible to accept at face value. Her daughter, Carly Aylesworth, told NBC News just 3 days after her mother disappeared that it was unlikely for Lynette, an experienced mariner, to simply fall into the water unprompted. Aylesworth traveled to the Bahamas herself to assist in the search. She provided her DNA to the Coast Guard to assist investigators. She asked questions publicly that nobody in the official investigation had yet answered. Lynette's mother, Darlene Hamlet, said investigators had not kept her updated and that she had not spoken to Brian Hooker since her daughter disappeared. She declined to comment further on what she knew and what she did not. The family that should have been receiving updates was receiving silence. On the evening of Saturday, April 4th, 2025, Lynette and Brian Hooker left Hopetown's Abaco Inn at approximately 7:30 p.m. They were in an 8-foot hard-bottom dinghy, a small motorized vessel, heading back to the Soulmate, their sailboat anchored near Elbow Cay in the Abaco Islands of the Bahamas. The route was short. The distance was manageable. But Brian told authorities the conditions that night were difficult. Strong currents, rough water. And somewhere in that crossing, between the departure point and the Soulmate, Lynette went overboard. According to Brian's account, she had the boat keys in her pocket when she fell. The keys struck the water with her. The engine shut off. He lost sight of her in the dark. He said he tried to throw her a flotation device. He said the currents took her before he could do anything else. What followed, according to Brian Hooker, was hours of paddling. No engine, no power, an 8-foot dinghy in the dark. He claimed to have paddled through the night until he reached the Marsh Harbor Boat Yard on a separate island at approximately 4 in the morning on April 5th. He told someone there what had happened. That person informed police. The Royal Bahamas Police Force launched a search. Brian Hooker was arrested on April 8th in connection with his wife's disappearance. He was held for 5 days and released without charges on April 13th. Royal Bahamas Police Commissioner Shanton Knowles confirmed at the time that he would remain a suspect despite the release. Brian Hooker denied any wrongdoing. His attorney stated publicly that he categorically and unequivocally denied harming his wife. But there were details in his account that the people closest to Lynette could not reconcile from the beginning. Carly Aylesworth did not hear from Brian until more than 24 hours after her mother disappeared. He called her on Sunday, the day after the incident, to deliver the news. When he called, she later described his voice as monotone and relaxed. She said, "I was in shock. I was like, my mom's missing? Like what?" The man who had just spent the night paddling through dark water searching for his wife did not sound like a man who had spent the night paddling through dark water searching for his wife. Within 48 hours of Brian Hooker's release and his departure from the Bahamas for the United States, where he said he was traveling to see his terminally ill mother, Cadaver K-9 units were deployed to Hopetown. That deployment marks the moment this investigation officially transitioned, not from active search to closed file, from rescue operation to forensic recovery. The distinction matters. Cadaver dogs are not deployed when investigators believe someone is alive and waiting to be found. They are deployed when investigators believe there is biological evidence present that needs to be located. What followed was 14 days of intensive multi-agency searching across 4 operational layers: shoreline patrols, sea sweeps, aerial drone coverage, and submersible operations beneath the surface of the Sea of Abaco. Across all 4 layers, across 14 days, not one confirmed physical trace of Lynette Hooker was found. The warm, shallow, and salt-dense waters of the Abacos create conditions that accelerate biological breakdown and increase the mobility of any material in the water. Cadaver dogs in maritime environments detect volatile organic compounds, gases released during biological decomposition that rise to the water's surface and are carried by airflow. Their effectiveness is heavily influenced by wind direction, water temperature, and the presence of marine life, including apex predators which can further disperse biological material across a wide area. Forensic nurse Rachel Fisher, who was not working on the case but provided expert analysis to News Nation, stated that conclusions in cases like this are not based on theory or opinion. They are based on whether independent sources of evidence, physical findings, digital data, environmental conditions, and verified timelines converge on a single, consistent explanation. At the end of 14 days, those independent sources had not converged, because at least one of them, the timeline Brian Hooker provided, was pointing investigators in the wrong direction entirely. Data obtained from marine tracking company VesselFinder tells a story that Brian Hooker's verbal account does not. The Soulmate, the couple's full-time home, the vessel they had been living on and sailing throughout the Caribbean, was equipped with an automatic identification system, an AAS transmitter that continuously broadcasts the vessel's identity, speed, and position to maritime tracking infrastructure. On the night of April 4, 2025, that system went dark at 9:29 p.m. It did not come back online until 8:40 a.m. the following morning, 11 hours and 11 minutes of silence. Former federal prosecutor Tad DeBassa, author of a published guide specifically on no-body homicide cases, reviewed that detail and told Fox News Digital directly that finding out how the tracking data went dark would be a key question for investigators. He used one word to describe the blackout: highly suspicious. An AAS system does not simply turn itself off. It transmits continuously by design. Turning it off requires a deliberate act. And turning off a vessel's tracking signal during the same window your wife disappears from a nearby dinghy is not a detail investigators can set aside. The Coast Guard Investigative Service opened a criminal investigation into the case in the days following Brian Hooker's report. That decision to treat this as a criminal matter rather than a maritime accident was made early and has not been reversed. The AIS blackout was significant, but the GPS data extracted from Brian Hooker's own personal electronic devices was something different. Brian Hooker had provided investigators with maps. He showed them the route he and Lynette had taken in the dinghy. He identified the location where she went overboard. He directed their search to specific areas of the Sea of Abaco, and investigators searched there. For weeks, the search was built around the location Brian Hooker described, around the route he drew on a map. Then investigators extracted GPS data from his own devices. And what that data showed was that his movements on the water that night did not match the route he had described. The device had been moving on the water. It had stopped in the Sea of Abaco, in a location Brian had not directed investigators to look. Then it returned. A U.S. official briefed on the investigation confirmed to NBC News that Brian Hooker's account had caused investigators to search in the wrong area of the Sea of Abaco. Not a slightly different area, the wrong area. The Coast Guard Investigative Service immediately sought permission from the Bahamian government to send dive teams to the location indicated by the GPS data, previously unsearched areas of the Sea of Abaco with water depths reaching 25 feet. The Bahamian government approved the request. The dive team was authorized to search for Lynette Hooker's body and any additional physical evidence. The FBI was processing all evidence at its facility in Quantico, Virginia. Investigators were also examining technology aboard the Soulmate, including an infrared camera that may contain evidence relevant to what happened the night of April 4th. Officials have not stated publicly whether that camera was in use that evening. On approximately May 11, 2025, the U.S. Coast Guard Investigative Service located the Soulmate approximately 40 nautical miles off the coast of Melbourne, Florida, and seized the vessel. The sailboat had left the Bahamas. 2 men were aboard. Neither of them was Brian Hooker. Carly Aylesworth, Lynette's daughter, spotted the Soulmate moving north along the coast and posted about it publicly. She said the men aboard had turned off their GPS. Hours after that post, CBS News confirmed the Coast Guard had taken the vessel into custody. The sailboat that was the full-time home of Lynette and Brian Hooker The vessel the couple had named Soulmate was now docked at the Fort Pierce Coast Guard Station in Florida, being processed as part of an active criminal investigation. Investigators were looking for everything the vessel might hold: physical evidence, digital records, the infrared camera, any trace of what happened on April 4th and in the hours before and after. Carly Aylesworth recorded a Mother's Day video message from the Bahamas during that same period. In it, she said, "It is the first Mother's Day without my mom. It is pretty hard right now to know that she is not a text away anymore." She had not been contacted by the Coast Guard at the time she recorded those words. The picture of the Hooker marriage that has emerged through the investigation is not the picture of two retirement sailors living their dream on the open water. Carly Aylesworth told NBC News that her mother and Brian had a history of not getting along, particularly when they were drinking. She said the couple's relationship had a documented pattern of conflict that extended back years. A 2015 Michigan police report recorded a mutual assault complaint between Lynette and Brian Hooker. Both accused each other of assault on the same night. A warrant was ultimately denied for insufficient evidence as to who had initiated the confrontation. Aylesworth went further in a separate interview. She told Fox News that she had witnessed Brian become violent before, specifically that she had seen him choke one of his own daughters, that they had been required to go to court over that incident. She alleged there was a history of threats toward her mother, including threats, she said, to throw her overboard. Brian Hooker has denied all allegations of wrongdoing through his attorney. He has not been charged with any crime. A friend of the couple, Blaine Stevenson, spoke to News Nation about a phone call he had with Brian Hooker after Lynette's disappearance. Stevenson said he began recording the call to help track what Brian was telling him in case it assisted search efforts. He described Brian's account during that call as all over the place, inconsistent enough that Stevenson had become confused following it. Lynette's mother, Darlene Hamlet, has had no contact with Brian Hooker since her daughter disappeared. This is what the confirmed verified record shows. Not theory, not allegation, not online speculation. Lynette Hooker, 55, experienced mariner, disappeared from the waters near Elbow Cay, Abaco Islands, Bahamas, on the night of April 4th, 2025. The sole witness to what happened on the water that night was her husband of more than 20 years, Brian Hooker. Brian Hooker directed investigators to a search area based on his account of where Lynette went overboard. That search, spanning 14 days, 4 operational layers, Cadaver K9 units, aerial drones, sea sweeps, and submersible operations, found nothing. The Soulmate's AIS tracking system went dark at 9:29 p.m. on the night she disappeared and did not resume for more than 11 hours. A former federal prosecutor called that blackout highly suspicious. GPS data extracted from Brian Hooker's own electronic devices contradicted the account he gave investigators about his movements on the water that night. A U.S. official confirmed that his version of events had sent the search to the wrong area entirely. The U.S. Coast Guard Investigative Service opened a criminal investigation. The FBI is processing evidence at Quantico. The Soulmate was seized and transported to Fort Pierce, Florida. Dive teams were authorized to search a new area of the Sea of Abaco based on the GPS data. The infrared camera aboard the vessel is being examined. Family members provided DNA. Brian Hooker did not call his stepdaughter until more than 24 hours after her mother disappeared. When he called, she described his voice as monotone and relaxed. He said he would remain in the Bahamas to find his wife. He then returned to the United States. His current whereabouts are not publicly known. Lynette Hooker has not been found. She was an experienced sailor. She was not a woman who simply fell off a boat. Her daughter does not believe that. Her mother does not believe that. And based on the GPS data extracted from the device of the only man who was there that night, investigators are no longer searching where he told them to look. They are searching where the data says to look. And those are not the same place. If you have any information about this case, contact the U.S. Coast Guard Investigative Service or the Royal Bahamas Police Force. The investigation is active. The search has not closed. And the truth about what happened in the dark waters near Elbow Cay on the night of April 4th is still out there, somewhere in the Sea of Abaco, waiting to be found. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more information like this. Thanks. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.